Join Marty Johnson, the holistic health practitioner and founder of Total Health Nutrition Center in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, as he delivers these podcasts to enlighten you and give you hope that there are health solutions to conditions that seem difficult to resolve, or even better answers than a medical approach of prescribing a chemical drug, which most times is nothing more than a Band-Aid fix, rather than getting to the root cause of your problem. The mission of the Total Health podcast is to provide the education and support that will lead to transforming people's healths so they can live a much more efficient, productive, and happier life the way God intended it to be. Join him now for his latest podcast.
Okay, so today we're going to talk more about digestion. I've done some other podcasts on the digestive system, basically starting from the mouth. Remember, digestion being a north to south process, so we started from the mouth and then talked about the stomach, and then after the food leaves the stomach, it goes into what's called the duodenum, which is kind of the beginning of the small intestine. And we talked about the role that the gallbladder plays in digesting fats and a little bit about the pancreas. But now I'd like to talk about the rest of the digestive system a bit. So once food has left the stomach, it's called chyme and moves into the to the duodenum, where juices from the pancreas are triggered to be released. Those are called pancreatic enzymes. And of course, the bile from the gallbladder is released or triggered to be released to help you digest fats. So in the small intestine, actually that's where 90% of digestion and absorption of food occurs. The main function of the small intestine is for absorption of nutrients and minerals from your food. So when food is going through the small intestine, the walls of the small intestine have what's called villi and these tight junctions. I guess the best way that I like to visualize tight junctions is kind of like a fishnet, where a tightly bound or wound fishnet would allow for just the smallest particles to sieve through and not allow other larger particles, to go through. So when food's moving through the small intestine, the walls of the small intestine should allow through into the bloodstream the nutrients and the necessary things that we need to get out of our food to nourish our cells and so forth, but nothing else, none of the toxins or the molecules of food that would be viewed by the immune system as an invader, that in other words it shouldn't be there. So a healthy small intestine should be like this tightly wound fishnet, just sieving through what should go through, the smaller things. But what can happen is, because of diets that are poor in diets that might have chemicals on the foods, Roundup, which is sprayed on different foods and in our environment. There's a chemical called glyphosate. Eating foods that are more inflammatory, like the modern wheat that's been hybridized, has 5 times the amount of gluten than the ancient grain did. And that's the protein in wheat that can be very inflammatory. So the combination of all these things can slowly start to cause more inflammation and actually widen out these tight junctions, or if you want to visualize, kind of opening up that fishnet so that molecules that should normally not go through into the bloodstream start to go through. And when that happens, the immune system looks at those things as an invader and goes after them, causing more inflammation in the body. The immune system, inflammation is actually a healthy immune response when it's happening for the right reason. So if your immune system is working on healing a wound, like a scrape on your knee or something, you'll notice that when that wound is healing, it's kind of red all around that area. Well, that's inflammation in a healthy way to promote healing. But if you have constant toxins and things moving through into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, and the immune system keeps going after it, it's going to cause a lot of unhealthy inflammation. So that can be a big problem because it can cause a lot of health issues for a person, even autoimmune conditions, because if these molecules move into the system and move into areas where they shouldn't be, or attach on to different organs, or maybe even get into your joints, and the immune system is trying to clean that up and it can't, eventually the immune system will start to dysregulate and go after that joint tissue, and now we call it rheumatoid arthritis. Or if it's in the thyroid, they call it Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which are all inflammatory conditions because the immune system is trying to clean something up there. So this leaky gut can cause a lot of problems. And if things are causing that gut, the tight junctions and the mucous membrane in the gut to break down, it's also identical to the same type of junctions that are in what's called the blood-brain barrier, which is the barrier in the brain, blood vessels in the brain, that keeps certain toxins away from your brain, from getting into your brain. So if that starts to break down, now you have a leaky brain, just like a leaky gut. So this gut issue actually can become a brain issue as well, causing more cognitive problems and focus problems and fogginess and so forth. So throughout this whole small intestine, protease, which is an enzyme that's produced by the pancreas, is helping to break down proteins further. Lipase is also helping to break down fats, and amylase is helping to break down carbohydrates. So that whole process is taking place in the small intestine. I'd like to go on to the large intestine, but I think at this point it would be good to do that at a different podcast, which will wrap up our series of podcasts.
Thanks for joining us today on the Total Health Podcast. If you'd like more information about how Total Health can transform your health, check them out. They would love to set up a free consultation with you over the phone. Call them at 262-251-2929 to make that appointment. Otherwise, you can check them out on the web at www.totalhealthinc.com.